Hello everyone, I hope you all are doing well. Today's video is a bit different from my usual content. As many of you know, I made a video in 2021 outlining why CNN's failure to fire Chris Cuomo promptly hurts its credibility. The video was a short but precise explanation of Cuomo's ethical failures at CNN. However, despite CNN firing Cuomo, he has only maintained a position in the news media with the self-described unbiased news channel News Nation. To put it lightly, Chris Cuomo is again in a position he doesn't deserve. For those unfamiliar with the situation surrounding Chris Cuomo, CNN fired him over several layers of misconduct. Some of the ethical failures that Cuomo engaged in included assisting his brother, then Governor Andrew Cuomo, in his attempt to protect himself from allegations of sexual harassment. It is unsurprising that Cuomo would assist his brother in that attempt to protect himself, as he was also accused of sexual harassment against his former boss, which I covered in my previous video on Cuomo's conduct. But rather than rehash that video, it would be more useful to examine how Chris Cuomo has developed since his firing. When dealing with a figure like Cuomo, it is important to remember that media pundits are supposed to inform the public, at least in theory. So when one is ousted for violating the basic principles of impartiality and professionalism, that figure loses public trust. And to regain that trust, the person who violated that trust should face serious consequences if they're to be taken seriously as a repentant person. However, even with the loss of his position at CNN, Cuomo's responses have, at best, downplayed the severity of his breach of journalistic ethics and at worst denied what was, at the very least, an implicit attempt to influence the media towards a more sympathetic approach to his brother's scandals. Moreover, Cuomo has not taken responsibility for his conduct seriously. He has sued CNN for wrongful termination of employment and has gone out of his way to get millions from the company to recoup some of the losses from his contract, never mind that he is a confirmed sexual harasser. Despite this, Cuomo managed to get a new gig after committing acts that everyday people couldn't. When dealing with people like Cuomo, asking whether we would accept a normal person doing what Chris did is important. Would we accept the idea that a former co-worker could get another position of power after gripping somebody's rear without their consent? Even if we granted the position that Cuomo gives when dealing with his interviews with his brother, he would still have to face the reality of what he did when it comes to his conduct with women around him, and also in how he chose to reach out to former Governor Andrew Cuomo's team to advise them in an ongoing scandal. More than that, however, he still attempted to get information on Ronan Farrow's coverage of his brother's alleged misconduct. And when confronted by News Nation's own Dan Abrams, Cuomo creates this strange artificial line that he did not explicitly ask for favorable coverage.
But you said I never made calls to the press about my brother's situation. You did make calls to the press about your brother's situation.
But I think the distinction has a meaningful difference. The concern would be not that I called you and said, what do you think's going on here? It's me calling you and saying, hey, tonight in your segment, I hope you remember that.
That's different. That is different.
But that's what I meant, and that's what matters.
But that's not what you said.
This kind of obfuscation is ridiculous. One does not explicitly have to ask for a favor to be on the table. And this kind of evasive behavior shouldn't surprise anyone. If he is willing to do this and play a pedantic game, then he is likely willing to do more. In all likelihood, he already has. As I mentioned before, Cuomo has been credibly accused by his former boss, Shelley Ross, of sexual misconduct. She's not only accused him, but has provided documentary evidence of him apologizing to her for that conduct, but not before he apologized to her husband first. Still, some would argue that Cuomo should still be allowed a second chance in media. I firmly reject that position. To argue that Cuomo should be given a position of power when he has not only one woman who has accused him of sexual harassment, but two, is absurd. One of the accusers, former ABC producer Shelley Ross, who I mentioned earlier, has provided email evidence showing he apologized to her for his conduct, which she published in the New York Times. The other remains unknown, but her lawyers maintain that she also has documentary proof. Of course, that does not mean that Cuomo is guilty of the second offense, but it does suggest that there is some pattern surrounding him, and so long as that pattern exists, he will be unfit for a position in modern media. As I have said before, and will say again, Cuomo has far too much baggage to justify putting him in a position of power on any major news station. As of recording, News Nation has nearly 800,000 subscribers on YouTube, and considering its upload schedule, it is almost guaranteed to reach 1 million shortly. Cuomo, by extension, can ride the channel's coattails simply by being associated with this channel, and though nowhere near as large as CNN, News Nation still allows Cuomo to maintain a strong presence in the politics of modern media. News organizations across the board have struggled to maintain the public trust, so News Nation's decision to hire Andrew Cuomo is even more damning. News outlets must be held to a higher standard, and their staffs even more so. The public must know that those who are supposed to inform them will not use that trust to benefit themselves or mistreat their colleagues. If News Nation wants to maintain its credibility, Chris Cuomo should be fired. It is one thing to look for talent with name recognition. All news outlets do this. But to sacrifice the dignity of your station to someone so clearly breaching journalistic ethics is another thing entirely. For News Nation to hire someone like Chris Cuomo seriously damages its reputation and credibility.